So, welcome back students. So, from here on we start our NPTEL course Physical and Electrochemical Characterization in Chemical Engineering. So, this is our first lecture and the first lecture of module 1. So, we will go sequentially within module 1. That the first lecture I will actually focus on introduction of characterization techniques. So, whatever I have given in the earlier course outline, so I will try to expand on it. So, what is the content of this particular lecture? So, I will introduce the characterization techniques, then we shall discuss regarding the various classification of materials, how the materials are classified. You know, there are different types of material. As a chemical engineer, we are working on materials which are depending on interdisciplinary nature, let us say ceramics, then biomaterial, then composites, then alloys, super alloys, and all this we will see the classification of the materials and the classes of materials. So, then classes means out of those how they are defined and what are the utility and the purpose of these. Then once we define the materials, as I told you, then it comes the topographical or morphological and the chemical analysis part, that will be all be given in the case of characterization techniques. This is the important aspect where we will discuss all the different modules and the course structure what we will cover. So, some of the course structure which we will cover, as I told you, there will be some overlap and there are some course content which does not have any overlap, which is specific to a chemical engineer. So, that I will cover in the course outline. Okay, moving ahead. So, let us first introduce what we mean by a material. So, why we require this course? We require this course because this course pertains to development of a new material. So, the development of new material implies if you want to apply certain concepts what you have gained in your, let us say, in your subjects, and you want to define a new material, whether it may be a normal amorphous material or a crystalline material or maybe a combination of two elements which we call as alloy. So, it pertains to that. First, the synthesis procedure. So, this pertains to the synthesis procedure. Then we come to, if you are making that, so you need these techniques, the production, the fabrication and the application of high performance material. Now, only preparing a material will not suffice. You have to do a production, you have to fabricate that material, and then you have to apply it for a high performance. Means high performance means you will define what is that performance. So, in the case of, let us say, you are preparing one catalyst. So, the catalyst when you prepare, it should be very specific. I mean, if you are reacting A plus B and getting C, so it should be specific that only A and B molecules come together and react on the catalyst. So, in that aspect you will need a higher surface area. So, that is called high performance. So, in that case area is the criteria which is essential for more efficient use of resources and environmental protection. So, these are very important. So, you should efficiently use your resources, you should not waste it. So, you should get a higher yield. So, suppose you are mixing two chemical A and B. So, it should not like that we are having only a component C which is just 20% of the yield. So, whatever you are mixing, you are getting only 20% out of it and 80% is just wasted. So, that is a wastage of resources. So, you should have efficient use of resources and environmental protection. Now, when you made these particular chemicals or these particular materials, they should conform to environmental standards. So, what do you mean by conformation to environmental standard? Means it should have limited amount of the particulate, let us say particulate matter when you do such synthesis. Our like nowadays legislation is very strict regarding what you can throw in the atmosphere or what you can throw in your water. So, based on that, those pollutant level are all defined. So, you cannot go ahead or you cannot have a higher concentration, otherwise the entire process fails. Sometimes you do not know what you are preparing. So, sometimes you develop novel materials. which requires a deep knowledge of physical and chemical properties of materials. For example, nowadays this novel material, I can give you an example. In the recent what you have the COVID, I mean not recent, it is still going on, the COVID pandemic. So, you must have heard in the news channel that we are being using this oxygen concentrator. Fine. The oxygen concentrator, you know, an essential part of this concentrator is the zeolite membrane. Okay. What are these zeolite membranes and what is the purpose of this oxygen concentrator? So, what they do is that they will just select or purify. So, they will take in air and then they will just separate out the nitrogen and oxygen. So, this separation of nitrogen and oxygen requires to tailor made a pore size. So, there we separate based on the molecular diameter, putting in the shape based on the size of the molecules. So, oxygen, nitrogen, as you know, has different size. So, once they are fed it into the oxygen concentrator, you will be then separating out the nitrogen and you will only get oxygen. So, these are used, then oxygen, once you make those, so that is called the development of novel materials. So, once you make those zeolite, it is a novel material. Now, what is the application? Application is oxygen concentrator. So, the systemic tailoring. So, tailoring means you are systematically tailoring, means you are putting a particular size or a particular pore area where the air can go in and nitrogen can not get through that zeolite, but only the oxygen goes through. So, by this it does not replace the actual oxygen which we see in the cylinder, but it can give you at least 90% of oxygen saturation, which is, I mean, those who are not that serious patients, they can be given this oxygen concentrator. And again, when you are tailoring this, it will also depend upon what is the flow rate of that oxygen you require. If you want a higher flow rate, then obviously your percentage of removal of nitrogen will be less. So, these are those things which you need to consider before you make a novel material. Now, these were about the material. Then the important aspect which we will be concentrating is studying the structure. So, once you prepare the structure and you need to see its properties, structure, it means all types of structure, means we mainly considering the electronic structure. So, electronic structure means how the atoms are placed or arranged, how the atoms are arranged, and whether desired bonding is there. And when I talk about bonding, it means it can be any bond, whether it is covalent bond, ionic bond, hydrogen bond. So, we have to find out based upon our requirement. And then the properties, with these atoms, what are the properties we are expected. So, that is another important area where we need to concentrate. So, that is where we are focusing on the both the chemical, we see both the properties of materials. If I mean to say, it will be the topographical and the chemical analysis. So, this will give a continuous or a complete picture. Then the fourth one is to measure and evaluate the electrical performance of the material and fluid. So, this is an important aspect which is the electrochemical part. So, now we know we are dealing in energy devices, and energy devices may be renewable or it may be non-renewable, but in the case of energy devices, this fuel cell, battery, capacitor, supercapacitors are now gaining important within our chemical engineering domain. So, we need to measure, suppose you make a fuel cell or you make a battery or a capacitor, you should know what is that particular stability, what is the electrochemical stability. Stability means the electrochemical stability. So, what is the region where I can apply an electric field before it gets the electrode, the oxidation and the reduction reaction, the extent of oxidation and reduction reaction if it is a fuel cell, and if it is supercapacitor. So, what is that electrochemical voltage range. So, those things are all coming under the domain called electrochemical performance. Then finally, these 4 of these aims relates to the correlation between the microscopic structure and macroscopic properties of the materials. What do you mean by the microscopic structure? So, microscopic structure, as I told you, it depends upon how the electrons are arranged, how the atoms are arranged, and with that atoms, once it is arranged, so what is that it is giving us? It will give us, let us say if you want to test an atom or test a material, whether it is able to show that particular bond, or whether I have made a desired material with certain atoms arranged on a orderly fashion, and if that is so, what property you are getting. So, what is in the case of catalyst, again I will take the example of catalyst. It is a microscopic structure which defines the total BET surface area. Okay. So, surface area then you will require to enhance, or you take up the catalyst for further use. Okay. Moving ahead. So, just we now defined the characterization of materials refers to the measurement of its, this is very important, measurements of its physical and chemical properties responsible for the performance. The characteristics of any material, what we need to know, the chemical composition of the bulk and the surface. As I told you, the surface phenomena is very important in the case of the particular material which you have prepared, because there will be a different behavior at the bulk, at the surface. For example, if you have a particular surface, some of the you can with this different techniques, let us say you have a electron spectroscopic technique, let us say XPS. So, XPS what it will do, it will just send out an X-ray and it will hit the target of the surface, but it cannot go more than let us say 100 nanometer inside the sample. So, this particular 100 nanometer will be the surface, and the remaining whatever we have is the bulk. So, bulk atoms behave differently as surface atoms. So, we can only say the particular phenomena of how the atoms are arranged here in the case of surface. So, in the case it is very important to study separately the bulk and the surface atoms. Obviously, it relates to the bulk and the solid structure, crystallite size distribution. So, the morphology, the porosity may be of different types, that is micro porosity, mesoscale porosity, macroscale porosity, and the surface area. Okay. So, these are various aspects you should keep in mind. So, the chemical properties is another important aspects. So, in the chemical properties what we see is the valence state. The valence state means what is the gap between the conduction band and the valence band. So, that gap gives us how much energy we require to provide, so that the electrons can jump from the valence to the conduction band. So, that is important. Then the electronic states. The electronic states mean how the electronic is getting transition. So, as we will see later, the electronic transition implies that especially in UV spectroscopy, you must have studied ultraviolet spectroscopy, it relates to the electronic transition from a ground state to a excited state. So, once that electron comes back to the excited state, that is called a UV spectroscopy is governed, and you get the how much it is absorbed. So, that absorption pattern you come to know, okay, this is that particular compound, and this you can also quantify that. The molecular structure, as I told you, then it will give us the aggregate properties such as the aggregate or particle size, the zeta potential. Now, the zeta potential is very important in the case of the colloids or nanoparticles. This is very important in case of colloids or nanoparticles. So, in this case, in the case of nanoparticles, stability is a major issue. You can prepare nanoparticle, but sometimes when you prepare it, you may not get in the nano domain, you may get something let us say in the macro domain, or they may aggregate, they may just fall down. Suppose you are preparing a thermal fluid or nano fluid, you prepare the nanoparticles, insert it into a solution, but they may all settle down. So, may form aggregate. So, we should avoid that, and for avoiding that, this zeta potential, I mean it gives us the charge. So, if this is a particular nanoparticle, so how are they oriented with the surface? Suppose this surface is all positively charged, so and the entire solution with the nanoparticle are negatively charged. So, this particular nanoparticle will try to balance the charges on the surface. So, you get this charge potential, that how this charge are actually balanced in the case of zeta potential. So, values of zeta potential will tell us how thermally stable the nanoparticles are. Then the density is a very basic phenomena. Then morphology, Then the mechanical strength, although we are not going into the mechanical strength in this class, but morphology we will see. Morphology we will see various techniques, like we will see, essentially we will see the X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, then X-ray photon spectroscopy, and the Auger electron spectroscopy. All these are based on the fluorescence behavior, while XRF, as you know, are of two types. So, wide dispersive spectroscopy, and you have the energy dispersive spectroscopy, the wide dispersive spectroscopy, and you have energy dispersive spectroscopy. Then XPS is X-ray photon spectroscopy, where you have the X-rays hitting on the surface, photons, because of the photons, an electron is taken out from the material. So, once it is taken out, it will give us a nature of binding energy. Then you have the Auger electron spectroscopy. So, other than XPS, another phenomena sometimes occurred is called Auger electron spectroscopy. We will see this in the subsequent lectures. So, moving ahead, the classification of materials. So, as I told you, we need to define all the materials which are available in nature. So, majorly they are classified as natural and synthetic, fine. Out of this natural, you will know this is inorganic and the organic. Inorganic, you know, it is minerals, clays, sand. You are well aware of, I need not to discuss what I mean by mineral, clays, sand. Then organic is called, maybe it may be biomass, it may be leather, it may be sugar, protein. The biomass, as you know, is of plant material, decaying plants, those are biomass, or decaying wood, those are all biomass. These are the rich source of polymers, natural polymers. So, biomass are of three different constituents, you must be knowing: lignin, cellulose, hemicellulose. So, from there you get various value added chemicals, value added chemicals. Then leather, sugar, proteins. Then on the other hand, we have synthetic, we have bulk material, the micro scale and nano scale. Bulk you are familiar with, I will discuss it later. Micro scale, maybe we call it as micro electromechanical system, called MEMS. What is this MEMS? MEMS is something like we have something within the range of, you know, millimeter to micrometer order. So, in this case, the millimeter and micro order, then other than the macroscopic properties, when they are arranged in number of units together, suppose you do a reaction in a micro reactor. So, that is a type of MEMS system. So, it means that what we are doing is we are conducting a same experiment instead of the familiar CSTR, plug flow reactor, or a batch reactor, in a micro reactor. So, micro reactor, what it will be, in the surface and the viscosity effects will govern, okay. The magnetism, all these things are the properties which will govern the behavior of the, or which will govern the conversion of this micro reactor. So, these are called those devices which are working in that particular range. So, micrometer to millimeter, micrometer to millimeter, those are called MEMS devices. Then the nanoscale, you must be knowing, nanoscale obviously those which are in the range of 1 to 100 nanometer, we call those as nanomaterials, okay. So, these are the various types, the carbon nanotubes, graphene, quantum dots. So, carbon nanotubes, graphene, these are very strong, they conduct heat and electricity. So, because of the reason that they are all arranged in certain manner where it is a sigma bond, but what it does is it contributes one electron on the conduction band. So, since it gives out a one electron in the conduction band, so it efficiently carries out heat and electricity. So, this is very useful in the case of, let us say, in thermal fluid. So, if you have a graphene, because of its important aspect of all these are, it has a high surface to volume ratio. So, your surface is pretty much higher in case of nanomaterials. So, because of this high surface to volume ratio, you can carry out various application related to catalysis, related to sensors and other domains. Then the new ones which are called quantum dots. What quantum dots means, these are something where in nanomaterials an important part which has to be considered is the aspect ratio. See, in carbon nanotubes, this one and graphene, maybe you will be having, you have, suppose if I define a structure in terms of length and breadth, the length may be in terms of nanometer, but the breadth may not be, or width may not be. So, still we call those nanomaterial, graphene also. But in quantum dot, all of the, both the dimension, if I suppose this is a quantum dot, so both the dimension are within the range of nanomaterials. So that is called quantum dots, very difficult to synthesize. These are also called as artificial atoms. So it has a valence and conduction band. So what it is, based on the size of the quantum dots, it will emit out. So if you pass on a particular photons into this particular, it will absorb energy and emit a wavelength of particular intensity. This wavelength is in the visible region, so it can be used in the sensors. Okay. So in visible region, it will depend on what color you want that quantum dot to emit. So that again will be based on the size of the quantum dot. So that's why this aspect ratio here does not work. It is actually a size of the nanomaterial, length and breadth both are similar. So that's why these quantum dots are also called as artificial atoms, because they are within quantum confinement. It means the energy levels are within the domain, what is called quantum, means it is within the potential. It will not, like if you put down a particular energy into this ray, incident radiation on quantum dots, the electron may not escape. So it will be within, it is confined within the region of quantum dot. That is what nowadays very much useful. Coming back to the bulk, it is of two use, amorphous and crystalline. The amorphous are of two types, the inorganic and the organic. Inorganic, you must be knowing glasses. What are the one, in broadly speaking, inorganic means wherever you do not have CH attachment, there is no hydrogen, that when it is not there, you call those inorganic. I mean widely, I mean by definition, you can have C bond O, that is fine, but you cannot have no hydrogen in it. So those called inorganic. And organic is obviously, you know, you should not have this CHO, mainly carbon hydrogen are the integral part. So it can be of different material, composites, polymers, plastics, elastomers, fabrics, fibers. We will see this one by one. And the crystalline one are the ones where it has a defined array of atoms, semiconductors, solar panels, then microporous crystalline solids. This microporous crystalline solids, as I know, is maybe example is zeolites. So what is this zeolite? Zeolite, it means it has the atoms of aluminum, silica and oxygen, and I told you these are used for example, just now I have discussed in the previous slide, in the case of separating nitrogen and oxygen. Then solar panels, you know, these are all PV modules, photovoltaic, it works on the photovoltaic mode, photovoltaic cell, photovoltaic effect. Semiconductors, you know, it will have a valence band and a conduction band. So the electrons will move from the valence band to the conduction band, and so it will conduct the band gap. So band gap, it will be there in conductors. So somewhere semiconductors means it is somewhere lying between conductors and insulators, somewhere in between. So that is called semiconductors, and you know that its uses is used in many electronic application. So the major classes of materials, as I just now discussed and I will be discussing now, which is the ceramics, metals, polymers, composites, semiconductors, biomaterials. So as a chemical engineer, we are used to work in these fields more or less, although the material science and engineering also work in this field, but now not much is, a fine line is not there, that we cannot say that okay, this is the part which this branch. Now a entire curriculum of our bachelors, if you tell, or postgraduate, if you tell, has become increasingly interdisciplinary in nature. So once you go to your wherever you are doing your classes, so you should not say that okay, I need not know this, need not to know other materials, or I did not go to the basic structure, because you may be requiring this knowledge in some other aspect. Maybe you may be requiring how the matter behaves in these different, how the atoms behave in different materials. So let us see what is these one by one. So metals, let us say iron and steel, first we go with metals. Metals are, as you know, is a good conductor of heat and electricity. So one is the iron and steel. Iron is Fe, and steel is, we have some certain carbon to it attached in the iron, so to make it more strong. Then we have the alloys. What are alloys? Alloys are made of two elements. Here we, for example, we add gold and silver to get white gold, you must be aware, or bronze is one of the alloy like that. So these are used in various application, you must be knowing, for domestic use and other application. Now super alloys are some of these which are having very high thermal resistance. So these are made of group of nickel, iron nickel or cobalt alloys. They are made together and they are used in jet engine. So if I am correct, it is around closely a temperature of around 1000 degrees Celsius it can withstand. So because of this they are called super alloy. So they have a special utility, like it is used in jet engine. Then intermetallic compound, these are new domains, new compounds, and people are working on this area. The intermetallic compounds means these are compounds consist of fixed ratio of atoms. So the only difference between an alloy is that it shows long range ordering. So the way, suppose you have this, if suppose you have a 3-dimensional structure of a intermetallic, so and suppose this also is extending here. So if this is one of the atom, this is the other atom, this is the other atom, like this will keep on extending, long range ordering. But normal alloys, if and other thing you can see, there are some other which do not see a long range ordering. Let us say in alloys we may not have a particular ordering. Because of this ordering, these have huge application in catalyst. As a catalyst, so you can prepare for a certain reaction, you can design or you can make these intermetallic atoms in such a orderly fashion, so that reactions can occur, for a specific reaction can occur on these type of intermetallic compounds. While other applications are, let us say, for this intermetallic are magnetic materials like Fe cobalt, then superconductors, niobium tin, or dental amalgams, that is silver and tin. So these are called dental amalgams, in mainly the filling part, dental fillings. Let us go first the ceramics. So ceramics is an integral part of material science basically, but mostly all the materials I have not discussed it before. It consists of either of the ionic bond, covalent bond, metallic bond, van der Waals. So ionic bond is a very strong, covalent bond lies in between, and metallic bonds, when you have a bond between metal and non-metal, those are called metallic bonds. Covalently bond you must be knowing, and van der Waals is something which is based on the shape and size of the molecules. So mainly this ceramic you have this ionic bond mainly. So based on that you have these 4 classifications, you do not need to go into details. One is the traditional ceramics. Traditional ceramics are inorganic, non-metallic chemicals processed at high temperature. Okay. So these are inorganic, non-metallic chemicals. Let us say examples are porcelain, clay, or hydrated alumina silicates. Then glass ceramics called the uniform crystal size, which are treated with controlled heating. What are the use of this glass ceramic? There is glass and there is glass ceramic. These are two different things. It has high strength, durability, and low electrical resistance. So because of the low electrical resistance, it can be used in high temperature application as a insulator. Then you have the ferrite compounds. It consists of nickel, magnesium, and cobalt, and are magnetic but conduct electrical current at high temperature without resistance. So copper has some resistance. So you can use in place of copper. So if you want to reuse it in place of copper, you use ferrite compound ceramic, which are made of nickel, magnesium, cobalt. What is the use of that? High temperature. So all these are novel compounds, right? Nowadays people are working on these synthetic high performance ceramics, which are particles of uniform size and less vulnerable to fracture or thermal shock. Example are tungsten carbide, boron carbide, and boron nitride. So what is the useful? If you are making something novel, this should be useful. It is able to dilute acids, inert, and resistance to corrosion. Okay. So that's why it is very important to learn about this. So properties of ceramics. So what are the properties of ceramics? It is electrical insulators. This is an important property. You see the band gap I told you, the valence electron band gap is pretty much high. So, it means the valence electron is completely filled and is separated by a forbidden gap. So, even if you give some electric field, no electrons can move to the conduction band. So, the valence band to conduction band, so valence band to conduction band is impossible in the case of ceramics. So, this is what is used in electrical insulators. Some of them are transparent to visible light. Okay. Suppose the yttrium, aluminum garnet, yttrium, aluminum garnet, or yttrium oxide. These are all used as lasers. Even they are ceramic, but they are transparent ceramic and they are visible light. Overall, the properties are high elastic modulus, hardness, low ductility, high dimensional stability. It means that even if you put on more of the electric field, it retains its dimensional stability. High melting point, I told you these are metallic bonds, very high stability, resistance to corrosion and chemical attack. Okay. So, what are the examples? Diamond, silica, alumina, silicon nitride, silicon oxide, titania, zirconia. These are the common examples, and this yttrium, aluminum, YAG, Y23, these are special examples which are used for pulse lasers. Okay. Now, polymers. Polymers is an integral part of chemical engineering, you must be knowing, although you have a different branch called polymer engineering. You must be familiar of these polymers. Many undergraduate courses, they may be having this course also, because it consists of a large molecular weight of long hydrocarbon chain. So, you have a long hydrocarbon chain of repeating units of one monomer or more than one monomer. Monomer means a repeating unit. So, you may have a monomer of, let us say, type A, or you may have a monomer of type B, or maybe you will have both together, A and B arranged in a certain fashion. So, what are the properties? So, weight is one important aspect. So, higher or lower weight, these are very important. Then the hardness, then the rigidity, it is very rigid. Then the glass transition. So, what is the glass transition temperature? The glass transition temperature means, suppose you have a certain polymer and the temperature at which it changes from a glassy state. Glassy state means the individual monomers or the individual chains, because they will contain chains. These chains cannot move or cannot shift in any of the direction. So, they will get entangled within itself. So, once you increase the temperature, it will have a fluid like behavior, it becomes slippery. So, that particular is called glass transition temperature, and it is unique for a particular polymer, because that is very important, because sometimes you need to operate a polymer above its glass transition temperature or below its glass transition temperature. You need to know these characterization materials. Then the crystallization temperature, where it forms crystal, or the melting point. These three we are not taking up in this course, but I thought of explaining you, because this is all in thermal characterization method, which you will be finding in other NPTEL courses. They are good insulators of electricity. Now, these are natural polymers. In natural polymers, lignocellulosic biomass, it means the biomass decaying wood or the decaying plants, they are a rich source of carbohydrate polymers. The carbohydrate polymers are cellulose and hemicellulose, and this, if you apply enzymes on it, it will form and reduce it to sugars. Okay. So, if you first separate out this from biomass, you can separate the cellulose and hemicellulose from this lignin, which is the aromatic polymers, and with this, if you apply enzymes, you convert this to sugar, and from sugar you apply another process, you convert sugar to various chemicals. Okay. So, these chemicals are you call the platform chemicals or value added chemicals. So, that is a very useful synthesis route, and the aromatic polymers are the ones which are within the plant wall. This is very strong, it can be removed, cannot be removed very easily, but cellulose and hemicellulose can be easily removed by some pretreatment method. So, these are also examples of polymers. So, these are the examples with the common ones which is there, the polyethylene, you must be knowing polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride is called PE, PVC. So, these are the chemical formulas of polyethylene. So, N here is a repeating unit. So, the basic part is ethylene. So, this is the ethylene, it is rigid translucent solid is, so you must be knowing that it is used in plastic bag. So, well, we have certain polymers which we do not want to use, like the polyethylene one, but various research are carrying out so that we can design polymers which are biodegradable. So, these are not biodegradable, fine, but still they are of use in various, but they are nowadays, in order to make them at least sustainable, we are giving some micron size. The size of the microns, now the government has put legislation. So, 1 micron size, you must be aware of this particular manufacturing standards. PVC, you must be, this is the monomers, vinyl chloride is the monomer. It is used in pipes and flooring, and PVC flooring you must be knowing. Polystyrene, polystyrene is having a aromatic radical, this is it, styrene. It is hard, rigid, soluble in organic solvents. Packaging material, it is used as a packaging material. Then polyacrylonitrile, this is an important polymer because it is from the acrylonitrile. It is a high melting solid soluble in organic solvents. Nowadays these are used in water filters. Water filters, you may have this polymer, I mean not exactly polyacrylonitrile, functionalized polyacrylonitrile for water purification. It is able to remove a lot of set of virus and bacteria from drinking water. Then PTFE, polytetrafluoroethylene, CF2 is the basic monomer. It is a resistant solid, it is used for electrical insulation. Polychloroprene, so it is a combination of cis and trans. Polychloroprene is called neoprene, in commercially it is known as neoprene. So, this is the structure, the chloroprene is the monomer, it is oil resistant. So, these are different uses. So, all these are petrochemicals. So, petrochemicals usually are in the range of C2, C3. So, when we talk of C2, C3, therefore, we talk about petrochemicals. So, whatever polymers we get from C2 and C3, they are called C2, C3. These are the polymers we got from petrochemicals. Primarily, these are the important polymers from C2, C3 means C2. So, there is C1, C2. So, 2 carbon atoms monomers. C3 like propylene, polypropylene, I have not given the example here, that is the 3 carbon atoms. So, that is way it works. Then semiconductors, they are characterized by a low band gap between valence band and conduction band. We add some impurities so that it can place electrons into the conduction band, or we can remove electrons from valence band, that is p type semiconductors, and can act as mobile charge carrier. So, we can either add impurities or we can remove electrons. So, silicon and germanium are the examples, or from the type 3 to 5 compounds such as boron, gallium, lanthanum. So, lanthanides, or the type 5 is nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenium. Then you have, let us say, gallium arsenide, gallium phosphate, all these are examples. Or it can also come from the type 2 to 6 compounds from the periodic table. These are all example: cadmium selenide, then cadmium sulphide, cadmium telluride, zinc oxide, zinc sulphide, zinc. Okay. What are the uses? It can use the diodes or transistors or the integrated circuits. Now, the electrochemical characterization, as a chemical engineer, we are working in this electrochemical characterization. It is called various devices chemical engineer are working on the fuel cell. You must be knowing it uses chemical energy of hydrogen or other fuels to produce electricity. Then simple capacitors, it stores electrical energy in an electric field. Then batteries, it converts the chemical energy to electrical energy. Or supercapacitor is a new area. It is a high capacity capacitor that can store more energy, but on the other side, if it stores more energy, but the power density, how much amount of power it can give per second, that is less. So, you have both ways, you have to find out which of the particular device suits the need. Some out of the supercapacitors, they are defined in two manners: the pseudocapacitor, the redox like battery. It means redox means the reduction and oxidation reaction is happening on the both sides of the electrode. So, that is all called pseudocapacitor. And then another one is the electrical double layer capacitor. It is for use for double layer charging, adsorption of electrolytes, ion to the porous and electrically conductive electrodes. So, what happens is you have two electrodes. here let us say and you have a electrolyte which has positive and negative. So, in one when you apply electric field, these positive charges go here, negative charges go to the other electrode, then while discharging it goes reverses. So, this particular phenomenon of charging and discharging is visible in electrical double layer capacitors. So, electrical double layer capacitors I will define briefly. So, we have a capacitor which can store more energy than conventional capacitors. Double layer charging, I just told double layer charging means positive and negative ions migrate to each of the electrode in one of the cycle and then it goes to the other part while you discharge. Adsorption of electrolyte ions, that is what I just now told. It delivers higher power density as compared to batteries. Properties of both electrolyte and working electrodes materials. So, linear scan voltammetry and cyclic voltammetry are the two important aspects which we define in order to have a electrochemical stable potential. So, this consists of means you want to find out this particular capacitor whether it is stable or not. So, what do? You do a linear scan voltammetry. What it means? You can find out, you will see till what extent it is stable. So, how much within the range of voltage it is stable, that is called linear scan voltammetry. Or cyclic voltammetry means you send a particular voltage of a particular value, I mean with a particular rate, wider electrochemical stable potential. It means that if you supply a scanning rate of a particular potential, you measure the current. So, then you will get the range from which voltage to which voltage it is stable. So, that is called the operating potential window in supercapacitors. Then charge discharge means, suppose you know in a mobile phone you have the battery. So, how many cycles you can charge and discharge, it is analogous to that. So, how many cycles you can operate that battery within your mobile phone or any other carrier. So, that is called galvanostatic charge discharge. Then you have the electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. This technique means if I am putting in some current, so what is the resistance to that current? At a particular current I am putting, so what is the resistance? You measure the voltage and you calculate how much it is resistance. So, since we are putting an AC signal, so sometimes we do not say in terms of resistance, we call it impedance. So, in the case of electrical circuits we call that impedance, we will see that later. So, what is the comparison between the capacitors, supercapacitors, batteries and fuel cells? So, this is the comparison. This is the power density. So, how much of power it has, and this is your energy density. Okay. So, you should have both higher. So, both higher means fuel cell has got high energy density, but amount of power is very less, similar to batteries, and capacitors has huge power density, but it will release very quickly and the energy density just vanishes. So, these are called as Ragon plots. So, supercapacitors somewhere lie in between the junction of capacitors and batteries. So, now people are working on the supercapacitors and we will be then going forward with this in the future, whatever in the module 5, the last module where we will discuss the electrochemical characterization. Now, composites, we come to the new material which are called composites. Now, composites are defined as materials that contain a physical mixture of two or more phases that are chemically different and separated by a interface. What are those two different phases? Let us say you have a particles or fibers which are embedded in a continuous phase called matrix. So, you may have, let us say, carbon fibers. Let us say you have a carbon fiber and you put that in the case of, let us say, thermosetting polymer. So, it will be a composite. So, these may be different types, particulate composites and fiber reinforced composites. There are small particles embedded in different materials, or either you can have particles or you can have fibers. The carbon fibers, for example, here it is small particles. So, fibers embedded in matrix. It can be either polymer, ceramic, metal or wood. So, polymeric is a fake fiber glass fiber reinforced polymers. In here what you have is carbon fiber is inserted in the polymer as the continuous phase. It has high strength and stiffness at lower weight. and low values for dielectric constant and dielectric loss as required in high speed electronics. Okay, why is important fiberglass? Because it will have high strength and stiffness at lower weight, and it will have low values of dielectric constant and dielectric loss also as required in high speed electronics. Or you can have ceramic particles also embedded in the metal matrix, which is a continuous phase, let us say tungsten, carbide, cobalt, which is resistance to wear, hardness and toughness, or silica nitride in glass ceramic substance. These are particles in glass ceramic substance. It has a high oxidation resistance and thermal shock resistance. So, all this requires characterization technique in order to say that okay, this is what we have got, and we will go ahead with our desired property. Then biomaterials is one domain which many chemical engineers are working. It is used in medical devices. It is used to interact with the biological system. This is very important because once you put these biomaterials, you should be conforming to the human body. So, it should not react or it should not alter any tissue or cell. So, that is very important. You need some additional characterization which may not be here in this particular course, but it has to be done separately. Then selected and processed to be tolerated to human body. It includes all types of materials. It can be of metals, it can be ceramic, it can be polymers, just now what we discussed. So, like in stainless steel, you know, when you get a fracture in your leg, so you get a stainless steel support, or sometimes it is made of cobalt chromium alloy, artificial hips, joint tooth implants, or titanium alloy. Ceramic are also used in joint prosthesis, hard valves, tooth replacement. Types are alumina examples, hydroxyapatite, glass. Or polymers in eyeglasses. So, like when you have this cataract, you do the operation, so you put a lens at the back of your eye. So, those are called eyeglasses, contact lenses, or skin grafts. Skin grafts, these are all use of polymers. So, these are high molecular weight, let us say polyethylene, polyethylene terephthalate, all these are the basic constituents of the polymers. Hydrogel is one of the important aspect. It is one of the material which I just want to concentrate is a 3-dimensional hydrophilic polymer network, okay, which can swell due to the presence of large amount of water. It does not dissolve in water, but rather swell, and it can hold up water more than 90 to 90% of mass. So, if you have some material and it can absorb water, so it can host close to 90 to 99% of its mass when placed in an aqueous solution. The shape and volume of the hydrogel, it can be reversibly changed upon various external stimuli such as pH, temperature, light, electrical and magnetic fields, etc. So, Weitscherle and Lim first introduced the hydrogels in 1960, and natural and synthetic biopolymers often initiate. The way you prepare hydrogel depends upon the technique. It can be either the physical or chemical cross-linking to create this network gel. Okay, so we will continue our this characterization in the next class. So, we stop here. We then in the next class we will move on to the various characterization techniques. Thank you.